After over 15 months of war, where the Israeli occupation forces have brutally assaulted Gaza, leaving over 46,000 Palestinians dead and almost an entire population displaced, a ceasefire is finally approaching. Negotiations for a ceasefire appear to be on the brink, but with many previous failed attempts to hold the war, can a ceasefire actually be achieved this time? And what would it take for peace to hold? Will Gaza ever see real stability? And what would Gaza's post-war future look like? I'm Henny Saif. Let's go in depth. According to The Guardian, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has stated that ceasefire negotiations in Gaza are nearing completion, with both sides close to a deal. However, a final agreement has not been reached, with Hamas awaiting further details from Israel on the geographical scope of the ceasefire. Blinken described the talks as being closer than ever, but still on the brink. A potential deal includes the release of 33 Israeli hostages and 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, with phased Israeli military withdrawals. Despite the progress, residents of Gaza remain cautious due to past failed ceasefire attempts. Airstrikes have continued even as talks advance. In his statements, Blinken also outlined their vision for a post-war plan.
Efforts to finalize a Gaza ceasefire are intensifying following marathon talks in Qatar, with Egyptian and U.S. leaders pledging continued coordination. The negotiations, involving officials from Egypt, Qatar, the United States, Israel, and Hamas, have raised hopes for a truce and the release of captives. After more than 8 hours of discussions, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and U.S. President Joe Biden underscored the urgent need for an agreement. President el-Sisi called for an immediate ceasefire to alleviate humanitarian suffering, guarantee unrestricted aid access, and avert further escalation with catastrophic consequences. U.S. President Joe Biden echoed this urgency, expressing optimism that a breakthrough to halt the devastating war in Gaza was within reach. Qatar's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Majid Al-Ansari confirmed that both parties have received a draft text, with discussions now focused on final details. Hamas indicated the negotiations were in their final stages and expressed confidence in a positive outcome.
We are now at a pivotal...
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan suggested that a Gaza hostage deal could be finalized this week. If successful, the phased ceasefire would bring an end to a conflict that has killed tens of thousands, displaced much of Gaza's population, and escalated tensions throughout the Middle East.
Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar says he believes there would be a majority in government to support a Gaza captive deal if one is finally agreed. Speaking in a press conference in Rome with Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, Sa'ar added that the support is possible despite vocal opposition from hardline nationalist parties in the coalition. And for more analysis, we're joined from the occupied Jerusalem by Ms. Ratiba Al-Nadsha, member of the Palestinian National Committee, and Mr. Ahmad Maharim, the political analyst from Washington. Welcome to In Depth. First off, I'll start with you, Ms. Al-Nadsha. Now, given the current state of negotiations, how really likely is it that a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas will hold, considering the past failed agreements?
I think that the atmosphere now, it's more ready to have this agreement. I think the U.S. Pressure on the Israeli government play a very main role in achieving this agreement. And it seems that it will be a reality in few days, maybe next Monday, as I think, and before Trump officially become the United States the head of the United States government. So I think the atmosphere is very positive. Everyone is looking forward for this agreement to be held and announced. And every details now is ready from the both of the sides, from Hamas and from the Israeli side. Still, we didn't have the final voting in the Israeli government on this agreement, and most of the time the trick will be in this voting, but still we have like a pressure on all the elements of this Israeli government to agree on this agreement or this deal, including even Smotrich, who was very against this agreement, but now he is taking like an excuse from the religion organization to go with this deal. I think he will got like more and more in the West Bank if he voted with this deal in the government.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Maharim, Antony Blinken said that the U.S. has made a post-conflict plan that would obligate Israel to withdraw from Gaza, which the Trump administration would then have to implement. Now, Trump, however, has not confirmed whether such a plan would be implemented. Do you think Trump has other ideas?
Actually, there is a big hope. What we have heard about the Israeli cabinet and Benjamin Netanyahu, they're talking about how hard the negotiation was, and they're talking about deal breakthrough. Means that there is huge amount of pressure and influence coming from both administration, Biden administration and the upcoming Trump administration. So what the Blinken, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, Secretary of State of USA, said, it seems like he is having both approach of the going administration of Biden and the upcoming administration of Trump. Both of them, they would like to have a thumb that for 4 years, Biden administration have not succeeded in the Middle East only in one thing, that to support Israel and make all those crimes to be ground on the future of this area, Middle East. Now, they would like to wash their hands and do something at least tangible, accepted, the future of the area can be talking about. From the other administration, Trump, I think the stress of his language to both sides, that before 20th of January, they were expected to be on Monday at the White House. He would like this matter to be over. I think that kind of pressure make Israeli state and the Benjamin Netanyahu cabinet to go through, and almost the final draft of this agreement, hope by tomorrow, Thursday, the 16th of January, will be in fact, inshallah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Nadsha, how do you view Blinken's proposal for international forces to stabilize Gaza post the conflict?
I think that Blinken, and maybe I think it's not the administration of Blinken and Biden, who is suggesting that, but it's a suggestion from Trump himself, because he is seeking like more stable situation in the Middle East, and this will mean that he can make more and more deals. And we know that the Trump administration in its previous period, they would like to go for deals in a global way, and in a very wide way, not just to look on what is happening in Gaza. So they are putting a pressure to say that this deal is held in the time of, or maybe the end of the time of Blinken, and before Trump come and held these kind of deals with Saudi Arabia and the other countries in the region. So this regional deals will be the ending of Biden administration and the start up of Trump, that he is looking very looking for this kind of sustainability and to make this kind of deals in the Middle East, especially with the Saudi Arabia and his project of the Abraham agreements and other projects that he started with. But till this moment, if we don't, except this speech for Blinken yesterday, everything that the Biden administration did in its period, it's just to give Israel more and more weapons, and that it continues till the last week when they sent another weapons, and another deal of weapons to Israel was delivered in the last days of this administration. So what we are looking now on it is the new period of Trump and the deals that he will hold in the region, and how can the administration of Biden finalize this this account that they open in the Middle East with this kind of war and unstable situation.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Muharrem, do you think that Trump's reported pressure on Netanyahu factored into raising the chances of successfully reaching a ceasefire deal this time around?
I assume, and I guess yes, because the details of the agreement, it was really showing that very hard time both sides have taken in order to achieve or to reach a conclusion. There is 3 different steps of the agreement. Each step will contain of 42 days, and the details, actually it's too big to be discussed or to be talking about how many detained from the Hamas side to be equal to how many hundreds are present from the Israeli side as well. But I think at the end of the day, what make Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet to go through and not to make this kind of discussion without fruitful, that there is different pressure locally inside Israel and from the US, plus there's a big effort was taking place. I think it will be a good agreement to start with. At least ceasefire is a big hope to the Palestinian people and to the area in the Middle East.
Mr. Nacha, now, as you know, over 46,000 Palestinians have been killed in the war, and Gaza has been devastated. Now, if a ceasefire is reached, what would it take for the international community to hold Israel accountable for its war crimes?
We hope that they have this will to make Israel accountable on its crime. Till now, there's no signs that the international community is really dealing with this mascara and using even the word of genocide. It's not officially adopted in the UN till this moment, and I think that they have still suspicious that what is happening in Gaza is a genocide. So making Israel accountable is a little bit still far from being a reality, but as a Palestinian, we are putting a lot of efforts with our friends in the region and other countries who supported our right as Palestinian, and going forward with the ICC to maybe achieve some agreements that can make Israel accountable. But till this moment, I think that the international community is standing side by side with Israel. And even these decisions of ceasefires is to protect Israel from going so far in what it's doing in Gaza and in the Palestinian case as in general.
Mr. Maharim, do you believe that the proposed ceasefire deal could lead to a permanent cessation of hostilities, or is it simply a temporary pause in the violence?
Well, there is a big hope that it will be a kind of stability, because I don't think it is not on the benefit of Israel for the long term to do what you used to do as always, because for more than 16 months now, the ceiling of the hopes or the what Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet was dreaming to achieve never happened, either in Hamas, I mean with Hamas in Palestine, in Gaza, or with Hezbollah in Lebanon, or where else. But I think with the pressure coming from the international effort, started from the Trump administration, something could be different. And I think I'm optimistic that with the benefit of Israel, that there is a good continuation to the success of this kind of deal. I hope so.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Nacha, after 15 months of devastation, how can the Palestinian people rebuild and reconstruct and recover from such a prolonged and brutal conflict?
We are survivors, so I think during these 8 decades under occupation and several wars that we go through from Nakba till now, we succeeded to rebuild our society and to cure our injuries and continue. Maybe not as before. We are talking about more than 100,000 people who was injured seriously in this war. That means that even the protection, the production circle will be affected. 80% of the infrastructure in Gaza completely destroyed. And we are talking about even the chances of having the new birth people is going to be under the percentage that we used to have in Gaza and so far. And it will continue for maybe years to recover completely in Gaza, but still, we are suffering since 8 decades, and I think, and in every junction and in every situation and every war, we succeeded to survive and to rebuild ourselves as a Palestinian. But I think that the final cure will be for all of these injuries. It will be when we got our independent state. Then all these people who was killed and injured and all of these souls will deserve the end result of what we achieve as Palestinian people. So yes, it's very hard, and it took like years to recover in Gaza, but still we can make it as Palestinians.
Mr. Maharim, everybody's hopeful for a ceasefire agreement to be reached, but what obstacle do you think might be preventing Israel from agreeing to a permanent ceasefire, especially considering the pressure from hardline factions within the Israeli government?
That's true. There is 2 ministers are giving hard time to Benjamin Netanyahu, but end of the day, one of the more clear obstacles will face them is the details about the change of detainees with the Palestinian on the Israeli prisoners. The Israeli detainees has so many criteria. There is kids, there is women, there is military, there is civilians. So the details of that hope with the first stage, which is 42 days, will show exactly how much both sides, the Palestinian and the Israeli, are keen interest to carry on for the second and third, with the international effort, US, Qatar, Egypt, United Nations. I think something will has to be clear on the at the end of the tunnel, to give hope for all the parties that things can be going to the fruitful of the area.
Mr. Nacha, now Blinken has announced a plan for a temporary administration in Gaza under international supervision. What is Israel's stance on this, and how does it view the international involvement and its nature in Gaza?
If we are looking for the Israeli side, they are not willing to have any Palestinian administration in Gaza, and neither international forces as well. They want to have like a complete control on Gaza Strip and to control even the aids that enter to Gaza. But still we have like an American and international pressure, and we have pressure from the Arab region countries, especially from Egypt, for example, to have this the new administrative in Gaza Strip. And I think that Netanyahu announced once that he's not wishing to have Fathistan or Hamasistan. So he is not willing to have either both of these parties in this administration. So if we are looking for a Palestinian administration that not including the PLO and not including Hamas, it will be a very strange kind of administration to get the criteria of Israel. But I think neither of there's none of Palestinian administration will be enough for the Israeli or be accepted, for the Israeli, and they will start to find obstacles or put obstacles in its work in Gaza. That means that we need more and more international and Arab pressure to have a path for this administration to take its role in Gaza if it's implemented. And I still have some suspicions about the kind of this administration and how it can take a role in Gaza, not including Hamas in it at all after 17 years of Hamas control on Gaza Strip. Still, there's a lot of question that it's not filled yet in the Palestinian side and in the Israeli side as well. We are looking forward to have a clear vision in the near future and to see how these mechanisms can take role in Gaza, especially if we are talking about international forces, that the Palestinian side will not be very willing to have international forces on the Palestinian lands or to have foreign forces on the Palestinian land. Still, these details have a lot of question around it, and we will wait for the near future to be more clarified about what is happening and what kind of mechanism will work.
Well, Mr. Maharem, saying or assuming that if or when the ceasefire agreement is reached, how does Israel plan to address its image internationally after facing growing calls for accountability for its actions in Gaza, which have altered its long-standing narrative of being a peaceful democratic nation?
Well, that's a good question, and I think time has come that Benjamin Netanyahu and his Israeli cabinet has to realize that they have to be at some time, at one moment, accountable to what happened. The big demolish happened. More than 80 or 90% of the facilities and the housing and the infrastructure of Gaza is out of services. To bring it back and to make a chance for those people displaced to come back to their homes, they have to pay the price. And I think one of the chapters of this negotiation or the deal are concentrate on that point, that Israeli has to be accountable for that, and some kind of international compensation will help the Palestinians to come back. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Ratib al-Natshad, member of the Palestinian National Committee, and Mr. Ahmed Maharem, the political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us on today's show. Hopefully, a ceasefire agreement is reached soon, sooner rather than later. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.